Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Dr. Elizabeth. I want to start today with something that happens to almost all of us at some point. You reach for a product you've used 100 times before, maybe your regular cleanser, maybe a serum that's always been fine and suddenly it stings. Or your skin feels tight an hour after washing your face, even though nothing about your routine has changed. Or your foundation just doesn't sit right anymore, and you can't quite figure out why. Most people's first reaction is to panic a little, or to assume something is seriously wrong, or to just pile on more products, hoping one of them fixes it. But before we do that, remember what we covered in our last video, what the skin barrier actually is, that bricks and mortar structure protecting your skin. A lot of these exact experiences, the stinging, the tightness, the sudden sensitivity, are commonly associated with that same barrier being a little disrupted. So today, let's talk about this deeply. The general signs that are typically linked to a struggling skin barrier calmly and clearly without any fear-mongering, so that the next time your skin feels a little off, you'll actually understand what might be going on instead of guessing. If you watched our last video, you already know the skin barrier is the outermost structure of the epidermis, a mix of skin cells and lipids working together to keep moisture in and irritants out. When that structure gets disrupted, it doesn't usually announce itself with one single obvious symptom. Instead, it tends to show up as a pattern of smaller changes that, once you know what to look for, start to make a lot more sense together, rather than feeling like a random string of bad skin days. The first commonly reported sign is a persistent feeling of tightness, especially after cleansing. A small amount of tightness right after washing is common for many people and often resolves on its own within a few minutes. But when that tightness lingers well after washing or shows up even without washing at all, it's often associated with reduced moisture retention, one of the barrier's two core jobs, alongside keeping irritants out. The second sign is increased sensitivity to products that previously felt completely fine. This is one of the more noticeable patterns, because it represents a real change from a known baseline. A cleanser you've used for months suddenly stings. A moisturizer that always felt soothing now feels slightly irritating on contact. This shift is commonly associated with barrier disruption, because a compromised barrier allows ingredients to interact more directly with deeper skin cells than they normally would, rather than being filtered by an intact outer layer. The third sign is a rough or uneven texture, sometimes described as skin that looks slightly flaky or feels less smooth to the touch, even in the absence of visible dryness elsewhere on the face. Because the barrier is largely made up of the outermost skin cells and the lipids sitting between them, disruption to that structure can affect how smoothly those cells sit together and how evenly light reflects off the surface. The fourth sign is a change in how skin looks overall, often described simply as dullness, or skin that looks less vibrant than usual, even when nothing dramatic seems to have happened. This is generally linked to the barrier's role in supporting even hydration and a healthy surface texture, both of which influence how light interacts with skin. The fifth sign is increased reactivity, redness, itching, or a stinging sensation that appears more easily than it used to, sometimes even in response to things like weather changes, water temperature, or mild environmental factors that never used to bother you at all. It's worth pausing here to say clearly, these signs overlap significantly with a number of other skin conditions, including certain inflammatory conditions that genuinely require professional diagnosis. This video is describing general patterns commonly associated with barrier disruption. It is not a diagnostic tool, and it's not meant to replace an actual examination. If any of these signs are severe, persistent, or getting worse over time, that's a reasonable and important moment to consult a dermatologist, rather than trying to self-treat your way through it. It's also useful to understand what commonly contributes to these signs showing up in the first place. Over-cleansing, washing too frequently, or using cleansers that are stronger than your skin actually needs, is one of the more common contributing factors. Over-exfoliating, whether through physical scrubs or frequent use of chemical exfoliants, is another. Introducing several new active ingredients into your routine all at once, rather than one at a time, makes it much harder to identify what's actually causing a reaction if one shows up. Environmental factors like cold, dry air, sudden humidity changes, or even long periods in air conditioning can also play a role, since they affect how much moisture the barrier is naturally able to hold on to. I'll be honest with you, I've experienced this myself. There was a stretch a while back where I was testing several new active ingredients at once, and within about a week, my skin started doing exactly what I've just described. Tight after cleansing, stinging with a serum I'd used for years without issue, and a texture that just felt slightly off under my fingertips. It took stepping back, simplifying everything down to a gentle cleanser and a basic moisturizer for about 2 weeks before things settled again. I mention that because it's a good reminder that even with a background in this field, these patterns can sneak up on anyone, and the response doesn't have to be dramatic to work. Now let's talk through a few common myths, because a lot of the advice floating around online tends to make this worse rather than better. Myth 1. If your skin reacts to a product, the product is automatically bad or wrong for your skin type. A reaction doesn't always mean the formulation itself is the problem. If the barrier is already disrupted, previously well-tolerated products can suddenly cause reactions simply because the barrier's protective function is temporarily reduced. This is part of why dermatologists generally recommend addressing the underlying barrier issue first, rather than immediately switching to a whole new lineup of products. Myth 2. If your skin doesn't look visibly irritated, the barrier must be fine. Some of the signs we've covered today, dullness, subtle roughness, mild tightness, aren't dramatic or highly visible at all. Many people notice barrier-related changes in how their skin feels day to day, long before anything looks obviously different in the mirror. Paying attention to how skin feels, not just how it looks, is a genuinely useful habit to build. Myth 3. The solution is always to add more products. When these signs show up, the common instinct is to add something new, a richer cream, a repairing serum, an extra step in the routine. But dermatologists generally recommend the opposite approach first, simplifying the routine, temporarily reducing active ingredients, and giving the barrier's own natural repair processes the time they need to do their work. So what does this mean practically in your actual day-to-day routine? First, if you notice a cluster of these signs together, tightness, new sensitivity, dullness, rough texture, increased reactivity, rather than panicking or overhauling your entire routine overnight, it's reasonable to pause and consider whether recent changes in products, weather, or habits might be contributing factors worth adjusting. Second, simplifying your routine temporarily. Fewer active ingredients, gentler cleansing, and consistent basic moisture is a commonly recommended low-risk first step that gives the barrier the space it needs to recover, since this recovery process is generally gradual rather than instant. Third, and this part is genuinely important, if these signs are severe, don't improve with simplification or come along with symptoms like significant pain, swelling, or spreading redness. That's a clear signal to consult a dermatologist rather than continuing to manage things on your own. Fourth, it helps to set realistic expectations around timing. Because barrier recovery is tied to the same cell turnover cycle we discussed in an earlier video, noticeable improvement often takes a couple of weeks rather than a couple of days. That's not a discouraging fact, it's simply useful context, so you don't abandon a sensible, simplified routine after only 2 or 3 days because it doesn't feel like it's working yet. Understanding these signs isn't about becoming anxious every single time your skin feels slightly different than usual. It's about recognizing patterns early, responding calmly instead of reactively, and knowing the difference between when simplifying your routine is a reasonable first step and when it's genuinely time to get a professional opinion instead. Your skin is constantly communicating with you in small, quiet ways. Tightness, texture, reactivity, and learning to notice that language is one of the most useful skills you can build as part of any long-term skincare approach. And if today's video helped you recognize even just one of these signs showing up in your own skin recently, that quiet awareness alone is already a genuinely useful first step toward responding to it thoughtfully rather than reactively. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing to Skin Health Authority for more evidence-based skin education, explained clearly, calmly, and without the panic.